Welcome into an all-new episode of the American Huddle alongside Andy Gresh. I'm Haley Outen. Hard to believe we are headed into Week 11 of the college football season. November is here, and the race for the conference championship is starting to feel more real and real each and every week.
Yeah, and when you think about all of the divisional matchups that have gone down, right? We had the big Memphis-SMU battle that I know we're going to touch on. It makes you realize how the early games matter, right? Because Navy's got to be sitting there in the West thinking, man, we lost to Memphis early in the year. Now Memphis kind of controls their own fate in terms of what could happen in the conference championship game. And for me, Haley, it's a good reminder that even though we sit here in September and there's that odd conference game that pops up, that odd conference game in the first month may be the one that keeps you out of an American Conference Championship game.
Yeah, let's look back to last Saturday, the top 25 matchup, SMU at Memphis. They had College Game Day in the house, primetime on ABC. The Tigers went on to win that one 54-48, but what a game. And there was just some outstanding individual plays on both sides, actually, for SMU as well. But wide receiver Antonio Gibson was completely the story of that game for Memphis. Walter Camp National Offensive Player of the Week.
Well, it should come as no surprise that someone from Memphis had a kick return for a touchdown, right? We've only been seeing that for 5 years now out of the Memphis Tigers. But when you look at Gibson, like, to me, the Antonio Gibson run, that was amazing. I mean, he not only did he run through contact, he ran away from defenders down the sideline for the touchdown, and that run impressed me. Look, he made some great catches. We know that Brady White's going to press the ball down the field every once in a while, but it was the way that Gibson contributed in other ways, Haley, that really stood out. And look, if they've got guys like that, a wide receiver, who have the ability to have what was a physical, punishing run on the touchdown that he had, it goes to show you how diversified their offense is, but how much is pure offensive athleticism they've got on that side of the ball, and trying to defend them right now is very, very tough.
Yeah, teams probably preparing pretty heavily for the running back Kenny Gainwell, but Antonio Gibson, now a new name to definitely circle and focus on. Gibson had 386 all-purpose yards, which was a conference record and the most by any FBS player this season. Also the first FBS player to score a touchdown 3 different ways.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that in and of itself is pretty cool. And look, SMU put up a good fight. Memphis was able to kind of extend the lead a little bit and sort of pull away there. I don't want to say the score wasn't indicative of how close the game really was, but I thought in that third and fourth quarter, Memphis started to distance themselves at home. And look, for SMU, listen, if at the end of the year SMU has got one loss, and their one loss is to a team that may end up winning an American Conference Championship, that is still one heck of a year. And I know you and I haven't really dove into this yet, but the Conference Coach of the Year race is as wide open as we've seen in a long time. I think there are 4 legitimate candidates. And if you want to throw Tulane and Willie Fritz in there, you could argue there are 5 legitimate candidates for Coach of the Year.
Yeah, certainly been an exciting year around this league from top to bottom. Memphis will have the week off before they head to Houston. Kind of a light schedule this week, Andy. Only 4 games, but it gets started on Thursday night. Temple at USF, and both of these teams are coming off bye weeks.
I think both teams needed the rest. And what do we have with Temple? Right? We don't exactly know how good their defense is, but I do think their defense will be good enough to hold up against this USF squad. And let's look at USF for a moment. I think we talked 2 weeks ago about how, that growth curve, the arc is kind of there. We're seeing them grow a little bit. It's not just them trying to climb. We're seeing them get to a point now to where you can start to believe in both sides of the football team, meaning offense and defense. And this will be a very interesting battle. I know for Temple, they're trying to get to bowl eligibility, USF as well. I think these are 2 teams that are in kind of similar places in terms of their journey for the 2019 season.
Temple at USF, 8 p.m. Eastern, Thursday night on ESPN. Moving on, Friday night, UCF heads to Tulsa. Now, the Knights trailed Houston, Andy, at halftime last week, but then they were able to turn it on offensively and come back to win.
Yeah, a big third quarter for them. And look, Tulsa is the little engine that just can't. They just can't find a way to be able to win a game. And again, another close one over this past weekend. I think UCF is starting to get into a little bit of a groove here. Dylan Gabriel is growing every week. And it's weird, but I love the fact that he's a left-handed quarterback, because I think it does change some things in terms of the way you call plays. You have to adjust as a coaching staff if you're on the other side competing against him. And UCF seems to be getting into the right kind of groove right now that if anybody on that east side, namely Cincinnati, has a little bit of a slip up, UCF's going to be right there to capitalize on that opportunity.
All right, moving on to Saturday, just 2 games, starting off with ECU at SMU, noon Eastern on ESPNU. For SMU, this game is especially important because, Andy, they're not out of the race yet.
No, they're not. I mean, it's a little bit like Navy and Cincinnati and UCF. They're still in it, so you got to keep playing. Here's what they can't do, and this to me will be the big thing for SMU. Do they have the ability to overcome the bubble being burst? We can sit here in our digital studios and say they're still in it. Does SMU still feel like they're in it? And I think as we saw last week, ECU deserves a lot of respect. They took one of the best teams on a top 25 team, or the best team, one of the better teams in the American and a top 25 team in Cincinnati to the absolute wall. So SMU better be ready to strap it up, and they can't feel sorry for themselves. If they come out and handle business, they should be okay.
Lastly, UConn heads to Cincinnati. Cincinnati, we just talked about it, had a little bit of a scare on the road last week at ECU, but what did you learn about that Cincinnati team, especially they were coming off of a bye week as well?
Guts, they have resiliency, and they've got the ability to beat you in different ways. Desmond Ridder can throw the ball. He'll also make running plays. I don't think it's a quarterback running all over the place situation, but you know that if you need to turn to him in the running game, they've got the ability to do so. And look, UConn, they just haven't been able to stop anybody. So I expect Cincinnati to hold the ball for 40 minutes, run and score the appropriate amount of points they need to win the game. And I do think that Luke Fickell will look at his defense and say, we were good in the second half. We weren't good in the first half against ECU. Let's make sure we put together a full 60 minutes on that side of the ball.
A quiet week in terms of number of games, but 4 teams ranked in this week's AP Top 25, and that's just the second time that that's happened in American history. But we use the term power a lot. We talk about the Power 5, the Power 6, but 4 teams in this league ranked. And then you have UCF just on the outside looking in. So where does that position this conference as a whole when you look at what's going on in college football right now?
Haley, again, I sit here almost every week and I rail on the rubes of college football for not giving the American the respect that they've earned. They've earned the respect that they deserve to get, and people aren't giving it to them yet. The problem is for a lot of these people, and I hate to say this, is that, the American would have gotten more respect if SMU had beat Memphis and had jumped up to inside the top 15 or maybe even to, say, 12, let's say. So people know, oh, well, look, an American team is up there. People, unfortunately, are going to look at it and be like, wow, all these teams are lumped in 15 or lower and da-da-da. When in reality, they're missing the point. The depth of this league is as good as anybody. They're up there in terms of ranked teams by conference. There's no other group of 5 conference to me that's even close. And to me, the American is better positioned than the Pac-12. But the Pac-12's got one team in Oregon that's way up there in the rankings, and Utah's up there as well. So people say, well, that league must be better. Top to bottom, the American, for my money, is better than the Pac-12. And if you match up Utah or Oregon against, pick any of those best teams. Go with SMU, Memphis, Cincinnati, or UCF. Those games are very even across the board. So to me, I hope people start to pay attention to the depth in this conference, and that just because there isn't a team way up there, it doesn't mean the league ain't any good.
A question from this week's mailbag that we actually didn't get to regarding the top 25 was UCF losses to Pitt and Cincinnati this year. So a fan at home wanted to know, how many more games does UCF have to win to break back into that top 25?
Probably one. All they got to do is wait for the shifting at the bottom, because we know there's going to be upsets this time of year. I'm sure there'll be a team somewhere who's playing directional state university who ends up getting beat and then falling out of that top 25. I think for UCF, just stay the course. What I hope doesn't happen is that if an American team loses that is ranked, that they're not the one to fall out to get UCF in there. It'd be nice to see everybody kind of hold serve and see UCF jam their way into that bottom of the top 25. But they're a top 25 program. Let's be real.
All right, well, Week 11 gets started on Thursday night. Make sure to follow along on Twitter at American_FB. And as always, head over to Facebook for full highlights. We'll see you back here next week on behalf of Andy Gresham.
You mean you're the lumberjack, right?
I almost got out of this show.
Yeah, you did.
You. complimenting
That
my
looks
fall
good,
attire.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Exactly.
It's a little chilly, rainy day.
Sure. You have a shawl to put on with that?
It's my flannel sweater dress.
Oh, I got you.
You need to get yourself one of these.
Some-
Now that you're like slim and trim.
Yeah.
this will
No,
look really
well,
good.
I mean, I do get cold easier, but I didn't know if you had like a blanket or a shawl or some Werther's Originals to have with that outfit.
So you're saying that I'm like 85 years old.
We'll see you next week, everybody.
Goodbye.